Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank NED and Koshish Foundation for inviting me. This is, I think, my fourth or fifth lecture in this hall and in this university, which I'm very happy about because it means my presentation is not too boring. Now, I was asked to give a presentation on climate change. I suggested myself to give it on biodiversity because biodiversity is something which you guys probably know nothing about, so it will be some interesting information for you. Before I start the presentation, just something about WWF, why we're here. Basically, that's it, the planet. We foresee a living planet, a planet where people and nature live in harmony. But at the current rate of development, we will need 3 planets to survive. And despite our advanced space adventures, we haven't found a further 2, so we're stuck with the one we've got. So coming to Pakistan, we're about 40 years old. We celebrated our 40th birthday last year. We have a staff strength of 350 plus, 30 plus officers from the coastline all the way up to the Chinese border. An annual budget of about $5 million US, and I think we give good value for money for the money we spend, and considering the work we do. And we're also governed by a board of trustees. We have, at the global level, we have 6 priorities: marine forest, marine forest species, climate change, freshwater, and the 6th one, toxics. And I think we're working in Pakistan on all of these issues. And we have 4 approaches. We always work in partnership, but we don't do things alone. We work with NGOs, we work with CBOs, we work with the governments, we work with communities. We build capacity of partners so that they have the capacity and the skills to conserve the natural resources of the country. We are not against development. We are not against dams, we're not against roads. But we think that these development things should be done sympathetically to the environment and with everyone on board. And finally, we always involve local communities. In Pakistan, most of the natural resources are actually owned and actually managed by the local communities. So we have a principle, in fact that's probably the first principle, not the last one, to always work with local communities. Okay, biodiversity and climate change. I'm not sure you guys know what biodiversity is. There's a quick explanation. Basically, it's all the diversity of species, genetics, and habitats in any one region. And Pakistan is a unique country because we have an altitude difference from 0 to about 8,000 plus, up to K2. We're the only country in the world without variability, which means we have a lot of biodiversity. You can see about 666 bird species, 190 reptiles and amphibians, a lot of mammals, a lot of biodiversity. Pakistan is a rich biodiversity country, but not many people believe it because people don't get out there and don't see the biodiversity. And I hope I'll show you a couple of slides of animals that you've probably never seen before. So that's biodiversity. Now climate change. What is climate change? It's unfortunate that at the global level we still haven't decided what climate change is. It's been called many things: global warming, climate change, climate variability. It doesn't matter because whatever's happening, we have to deal with it. Whether it's anthropogenic, whether it's natural cycles of the climate, it's affecting us. So we shouldn't debate on what's pushing the climate change, rather we should be looking at how to tackle climate change. And it's unfortunate that our politicians, not only Pakistan politicians, but global politicians, the conservationists and the industrialists, they can't even sit down and actually decide what are the problems and what are the way forward. And this is one of the big challenges to actually starting climate change initiatives across the world. And yes, Mother Nature is playing with us. I mean, we are getting more and more storms, more and more floods, more and more cyclones. Earthquakes are not actually part of climate change. Things are happening which is costing us in terms of life, in terms of money. So, some of the facts. We've seen a global change in temperature at last 1.5 decades, which has affected the globe. A lot of the glaciers have melted. In fact, one of the glaciers on Mount Kenya has lost about 90% of its mass. In Tanzania, you can't see Kilimanjaro with snow anymore. It's gone. There's sea rise level going on. Pakistan is also affected by the sea rise level by 10 to 25 centimeters. And each year we see in Keti Banda and along the coastline people live raising the houses each year, but each year the water comes in, sea comes in, takes away the houses, and they go back to zero. You're going to see the effect on the humans is you're going to see more disease, you're going to see more people hungry as climate changes, agriculture, livestock, all our ecosystems which we depend on. And even if you do actually reverse some of the, or stop some of the drivers behind climate change, it still takes a long time for ecosystems and for balances to come back, maybe up to 50 years. In terms of ecosystems, 50 years is a blink of an eye, but 50 years, especially for you guys, is a long time to wait for. So what about biodiversity? Well, again, a lot of biodiversity is being lost due to climate change. Each year, man finds about 5,000 or 6,000 new species of science. Unfortunately, in the same year, he loses about 20,000 to 25,000 species. So we're actually losing more than we are finding. And often we find a species before it's too late, before we can actually do conservation measures to save it. So we're losing species across the world on a yearly basis. Coral bleaching. Corals are anybody's seen corals? Pakistan, by the way, has a lot of corals. No one probably knows this, but Pakistan has corals and coral reefs. If you don't believe me, just give me an email. I'll send you the videos off the coast of Balochistan and Sindh. There are a lot of coral reefs in Pakistan. Changes in temperature is actually bleaching a coral and actually killing it. So you're losing a whole ecosystem, which is unique to many places. Bird species, because of change in temperature, change in seasons. I'll just give an example. The Baltimore Oriole, which is from the USA, it's called the Baltimore Oriole. Now it's had to be called something else because it actually shifted from Baltimore and lived somewhere else. Finally, polar bear populations. This is it's a cartoon, quite funny, but the reality is that we are killing our species. Polar bears now have more distance to swim between glaciers. More distance means more energy, and that energy is lost on reproducing, on feeding. So year by year, we are actually killing off, and these are big species. It's not a small butterfly or small insect somewhere in the Amazon. This is a big, iconic species of the world. Everyone knows a polar bear. And I think that if we don't do something soon, they are going to actually disappear quite quickly. Okay, now come to Pakistan, because I think you like to know Pakistani examples. I'll give you three examples. One from the mountain, one from the plains, and one from the coast. These are the Himalayan manal, the Indus River blind dolphin, and the green turtle. So the Himalayan manal. So this is a beautiful pheasant species, which is quite common in the northern areas. I'm sure you've not seen this before in the wild, but there are a lot of bird species of these colours to be found. This lives in the high altitude plains of Gilgit, Skardu, Hazara, Khorasan. It's the national bird of Nepal. This is the male species, and you can see it's very brightly coloured. The reason it's brightly coloured actually because it lives on glaciers. And you may think that what a brightly coloured bird doing on a glacier, but actually the iridescence of the bird is actually camouflage. If anyone's flown over a glacier, you'll see a lot of reflection from water and from the ice. And this bird actually fits in very well into the glacier environment. But as the mean temperatures go up in the northern areas, the glaciers have retreated. Now, this bird spends its entire winter up in the mountains. As the glaciers retreat, the habitat retreats. This bird has to constantly feed to stay alive in winter, with the habitat actually shrinking. So if you look at the summer temperatures in Gilgit, where this bird lives, they're not too bad. They haven't changed too much. There's no major change in the summer. But look at the winter, these temperatures are going up, which means less glaciers, less habitat for the species. And what happens is this would have been a glacier maybe 10 years ago, now it's a lake, which poses a different problem to man as well, and the glaciers have gone. With the glaciers gone, the bird doesn't have its camouflage anymore, and people can hunt it. We actually seen incidents of natural prey increase the last 10 years by eagles on this species just because it doesn't have its natural habitat left anymore. And in fact, in some areas now in Hazara, where the glaciers have disappeared, this bird is nearly gone. So what needs to be done? Well, we need to look at the community. We need to make the community aware of why they shouldn't hunt this bird. We need to declare protected areas, especially in winter, because we always think about summer breeding in wildlife, but in winter there has to be protected areas so that people don't go as their livestock, don't hunt the bird and don't disturb the bird. And maybe we have a new concept of protected areas. Currently they're static. They're delineated by the government and then they're set. Maybe we have shifting protected areas so we can look at the year-to-year on-the-ground scenario and actually identify areas which should be off limits to humans. My second example is the Indus blind dolphin. I hope everybody knows the species. Hands up who know about this species. Where does it live? Indus River, West Britain, the Indus River. It was a very common species before. It's an endemic species to Pakistan, which means only found in the Indus River. It means that if this population is in any way damaged or goes, it's gone forever. We have a saying in the Dutch network that extinction is forever. So there's the blind dolphin. Is not as colourful as a Manal pheasant, but nevertheless it's a very important species. This has evolved over thousands of years to actually adapt to the murky waters of the Indus. Maybe 100, 150 years ago there would have been thousands of these animals from the delta all the way up to the border with KPK. But with the construction of barrages, with unsustainable fishing practices, and also because of effects of climate change, we've seen this population shrink now between basically, I think, Chashma Barrage and Sakar. There were a lot of efforts in the last 10 years. The population went down to about 500 or 600. And with the efforts of the Sindh Wildlife Department and WWF, we actually managed to get the population back up to about 1,200, 1,500 animals. But we had a bit of a setback in 2010. There's the original distribution of the blind dolphin. So starting from all the way down from the delta, all the way up just near the border of KPK. So what's happened in the last 15 years, the droughts, I mean, we've had droughts, which again thought to be climate driven, from 99 all the way through more than a decade of droughts. A lot of the areas have actually dried up, which has restricted the population of dolphins within the river. Less water means less habitat, it means less fish, which means less successful breeding of the dolphin. Now in 2010 we had a complete reverse. We had all this water come down, and next please. And you see, I hope you can see it, in red was the kind of a stable population of Indus dolphin between these two barrages, and it was actually increasing. The block in yellow is actually where, after the floods, the dolphins were washed down into lower Sakar. And you may think, well, there's nothing wrong with that because, you know, it's an expansion of the population. Unfortunately, this is what the Indus looks like sometimes, especially downstream Sakar. This is actually downstream Koshish. You can imagine dolphins would have a bit of a problem surviving in a river which has been crossed by sheep. I mean, this is such a dire situation now in the Indus. If we don't get water back into the delta, not only the Indus dolphin will die, but a lot of other species, in fact a lot of livelihoods will also suffer. So what do we need to do? We need to ensure water. Climate change in Pakistan is very much linked to water, linked to land as well. So we need to get water down into the Indus. To do that, we need to have good water storage tanks, which you do have in the form of the Himalayas. Himalayas are very good storage tanks for the country, probably the biggest in the world. At the moment, we're cutting the forest at such a rate that the ability of these storage tanks to hold water in the soil is depleting fastly. So we need to plant more trees. We need to protect the watershed we have at the moment, so that when the floods do come, they don't come all at once. The water should come gradually and over the year. We need to rescue stranded populations of dolphins downstream of any barrage. which we deem is not suitable for their viability. We need to monitor the species as well. We need to look where the dolphins are, make sure that they're within a kind of a protected area and not to the mercy of the fishermen. Pakistan, unfortunately, has changed its fishing practices and policy quite a lot in the last few years, to a license, to a contractor system. At the moment, we have a system which is actually very detrimental to dolphins, because everyone's putting nets everywhere. It's a free-for-all, put a net in, and these are mammals. They need air to breathe. So they get caught up in the net and they die. Again, we have restricting habitat that you need to really look after your animals. My final species, which I hope Karachiites will recognize, is the green turtle. Anybody seen this? Has anyone gone to Hawke's Bay and seen the nesting? So it's an amazing phenomenon to watch. Unfortunately, it's just over. Again, Pakistan is unique that it has these breeding beaches which are still functional. So there's a nice green turtle. These turtles come each year to Pakistan to lay their eggs, breed and lay their eggs. Out of the thousands of babies which are hatched, only a few make it back into maturity, and they also come back when they're mature to breed. So it's a huge cycle, and we're just a very small part of that cycle, but a very crucial part of that cycle, because obviously if they don't breed, they don't survive. And our beaches are one of the best turtle breeding beaches along the coastline. So, I'm not sure any zoologists in here, but turtles, in fact reptiles in general, the sex of their offspring is actually determined by the temperature they're incubated at. So, about 25, 26, the temperature is low, we get females. We get female turtles. If it's 26, 27, we get males. Now, if you've got a temperature rise of maybe 2 Celsius, I actually can't tell you what will come out, because we don't know. But it won't be male, it won't be female. So, but this is a very severe effect on all reptiles, especially the marine turtles. But even a 1 or 2 degree rise in temperature along the coastline will actually see a change in the gender ratio of turtles. There are always slight variations in nature, which she does to actually kind of balance populations and balance things. But any severe temperature change can actually wipe out a population. And around the globe, we've actually seen some amphibious species totally wiped out just because of a small change in temperature. So what we need to do? Well, I mean, the turtle nests in the sand. We can perhaps try to actually mitigate some of the effects of temperature rise and artificially incubate the turtles, so we actually control the temperature of the sand, and we make sure there's a balance between the two genders. We also need to monitor the population of turtles to see if there's any change in gender and try to do something about it. Okay, what do we do now? I mean, not to these species, but what do we do about climate change now? Climate change is basically divided into 2 parts. When you talk about mitigating it, one is mitigation and one is adaptation. And can anyone tell you what mitigation is? It's written on there, so you don't have to be too small. What is mitigation? Anybody tell me? Yeah, stop the carbon emissions. Stop the actual effect of CO2 on the atmosphere. And adaptation is basically saying, okay, we're going to live with it because it's happening anyway, but we have to change our lifestyles to adapt to this changing environment. Now, Pakistan is way, way down on the list of actually carbon emission countries because we're not an industrial country. We probably only contribute 0.01% to the actual global CO2 emissions. So we're not responsible. But we are probably in the top 10 countries vulnerable to climate change. So while we're not doing it, we are going to actually get affected the most. So we're looking at basically adaptation as a tool to actually combat climate change. So just 2 quick adaptations. I've selected these because I hope Some of you know about solar and you know about biogas. I know some of the faculty members have been working on these technologies, so I hope they're relevant to you. Right. So solar, again, solar is it's not a new technology in Pakistan. It has huge potential, but at the moment, most solar technology is imported from China, from Germany, from UK, which makes it very, very expensive. I cannot afford to make my house solar. It costs me lakhs and lakhs of rupees. So this is something which you guys, as engineers, should be doing. You should be looking at local solutions. We need to come up with solutions which will work and which are affordable to the common man, so that he can actually adopt them and they can be scaled up at mass level. We're not talking about one building or faculty's office. We need every household in Karachi having at least a solar panel, saving consumption of the non-renewable resources, and actually making a change in how we live our lives. So again, something which you guys can actually do. Next is biogas, which is, I hope people are familiar with the phenomenon of breaking down biological matter under anaerobic conditions. Again, not a new technology, but we need more research and development into technology to make it mainstream within Pakistan. Now, it's quite common in Punjab, it's just taking off in Sindh, but does anybody know where this will be most applicable in Karachi? Any idea where we got the most available waste? Bairns Colony, yes, Bairns Colony is it's a nuclear power gober. I mean, it really is. But you know, we really have to be serious and actually come up with technology. We don't need European countries, we don't need US countries to come and teach us such a simple technology. We have the brains, we have the money in Pakistan, we can do it, and we can really demonstrate to the world. It's the biggest Bairns Colony in the world. How to actually tap what is seen as a waste. And it is. If you go to Google Earth, you can see this going into the sea. It's terrible. It's a crime. But, you know, and there's nothing stopping the university taking it up, piloting it, and then scaling up. Right? So there's a few just, these are small biogas in interior Sindh. They're 5 or 6 cubic meters. So the waste goes in one end with the water, the gas accumulates, and the other end comes slurry, which is actually organic fertilizer, which is itself a huge economic benefit to the farmer. Selling, in most countries, you can actually go to cities and find people selling slurry and organic matter. But in Pakistan, no one's caught on how precious it is and hasn't actually started it. This is a typical biogas, I think, in Nawabshah. You can see the buffalo to the left, a very small unit, but it has 2 or 3 main effects. One, it gives gas, so people are now not using the open chula, they're using a gas stove, which improves the health of the ladies, especially the women. Secondly, it means that kids now not spending a whole day collecting firewood, they can actually find time to go to school. And secondly, important for us is now the habitat is intact. This is where you link now this technology to actually saving wildlife, because you know, one household may be collecting on average 40 to 60 kg of firewood per day. Now imagine how many households there are in Sindh and how much wood and how much habitat is being destroyed because these people need to cook. They have a right to cook and they have the right to keep warm. So just a small technology invested into a local community really does bring change, and actually you can save habitat and ultimately wildlife. I think that's my last slide. What you can do, I would request, and I've requested every time I've come, is you guys really have to get into the research and development. Unfortunately, Pakistan, research is a dying trade. It's all plagiarism. And I think that this university is quite different. I've seen very good students and very good faculty members doing good work, but we need to get you guys out into the field, coming up with solutions for the country. And you can do it. I know Pakistan has no dearth of brains. It's just you guys getting out and coming up with very simple solutions which can be upscaled through investors, which can make a change to the country. We need to look at it in terms of carbon emission, and we need to look at it in terms of ecological footprint. As I mentioned before, water is going to be the next huge and crucial element of Pakistan's survival. If we don't have water, we aren't going to survive. If we don't have water, there's no agriculture, there's no delta, there's no fish, you name it, everything's dependent on water. So we know that there's going to be less water in the future, but still, there's enough water to survive. But you guys have to come up through drip irrigation, through different water management methods and applications to make it work. Because the farmer can't do it. The farmer doesn't have the education, doesn't have the funds for research. It's up to you guys to go, sit with him and come up with solutions. Finally, I'm thankful that this event has chosen environment as its main theme, especially climate change. So I would request Koshish Foundation and NED to hold more such functions based on environment, climate change and responsible development in the future. Government is always willing to participate and put their information, share information with students. And finally, I think you've got to practice what you preach. You know, we always talk about reducing temperature of our ACs and you know, walking to work and cycling and carpooling, but it's not happening. And we need to actually, I still walk to work every morning and I walk back. I don't take the car. And that's my little, very insignificant, but just one step I've taken to make sure that my footprint reduces. And you can go online, you can find carbon footprint calculators. Maybe you set yourself a target as a group or as a university or the faculty, maybe even 10% or 5% you try to reduce this year, 2012. You calculate last year's and at least it shouldn't go up, it should go down. So with that, thank you for your attention. This Christmas just gone, I thought that was quite a relevant cartoon, but don't joke, the glaciers are melting. One day you may be taking your summer holidays in the South or North Pole and visiting Father Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Excuse me, sir. We have question and answer session. If you have any question to ask with this presentation, it was a very fruitful presentation from Mr. Nawaz. I request the audience, we have got volunteers on both the sides. If you have any question,
hello. I would like you to please tell something about the mangroves of Pakistan, because it's the 5th largest mangroves in Pakistan, and I like people to get aware the usefulness of mangroves. It's also depreciating with time.
Okay, that's a good point. Mangroves is a success story in the making. We had about 160,000 hectares of mangroves probably 100 years ago, due to two issues. One is the cutting of mangroves, and secondly is the lack of downstream fresh water and sediments downstream concrete. They've actually been depleted to about 80 or 85 along the coastline. But with the efforts of the Forest Department, of the Coastal Development Authority, the trend has actually decreased. The trend now of losing mangroves is actually going less and less. So I hope maybe in 5 or 10 years, inshallah, there will be actually a level off, but we're actually starting to plant mangroves. And Pakistan, the Forest Department, IUCN, a lot of agencies are actually very active in planting mangroves. Mostly in the non-Karachi area, like Keti Banda, because those people depend on the mangroves for their lives, for their fish. They protect against cyclones and tsunamis. In Karachi, your mangroves, it's not that much, it's maybe 10,000 hectares, but these mangroves are the lungs of the city. So it's a very good point that, okay, we're out of time. It's very important that we save the mangroves. I think there's a huge pressure at the moment for cutting and for land. I think we had to be very much more proactive, and I am really going to extremes to save these mangroves. But it's not all bad news. The plantation going on along the coastline has been very fruitful. I didn't have I would like to show you a slide. Have anyone been to the Wetland Centre in Sanford? No one. Okay, we have a Wetland Centre in Hawke's Bay. I invite you all there. Even at the university, you can just call us up and you can have a field trip to the Wetland Centre. I have a photograph of, I think, 2001, and the mangroves were about 6 inches high, and now they're about 16 foot high. So there are success stories in Pakistan. We are able, and all this has been through the efforts of the community, not just WWF. It's the community and the forest department and KBT coming together, planning and actually saving the mangroves. So I actually have good hope that the mangroves will survive in the future. It'll be a success story for Pakistan.
My name is Abdul Salam. I was a student of this NED University, and it's a real pleasure to see you here. Currently, I am working in a multinational company. One small question, one explanation from you to the student, because I have been on the backstage 10 years ago. In simple words, please explain to them what is the meaning of footprint, what is the meaning of carbon emission, because we don't understand these words 15 years back. So it's very important for them to know what is footprint means, what is carbon emission means. So it will be beneficial for them. And secondly, how WWF is supporting them, because saying is very easy, like engineers shall come in with new projects and things. How WWF is supporting these engineers with the new projects and the new ideas? Can you please elaborate on that?
I'll try to be quick because I think time is running out. The first question, carbon emissions, is basically the amount of CO2 which is released during the process. When we talk about carbon emission, we usually talk in tons. And there's two issues to carbon. One is the emission of the carbon, and one is the absorption. Because when the bottles are here, plant matter absorbs carbon. A lot of industries, a lot of processes emit carbon. So big cutting, we're producing more carbon on the same surface, we're also reducing the Earth's ability to absorb carbon. So at the moment the levels are going up. Usually carbon is always emitted, natural gases are there, being emitted by a lot of processes, but they were absorbed by other natural processes. We've actually taken out the latter. We've taken out the ability to absorb carbon and other gases, so that's affecting our atmosphere. Footprint, okay, very briefly, whatever you do has a footprint. If we usually measure it in square feet, it could be in kilometers squared. Basically, it's the amount of resources, natural resources needed to produce something. For example, little water footprint. Now, for 1 kg of meat, it may need 20,000 gallons of water, because you have to feed the cow, you have to let it grow, you have to kill it, all the processes. It may cost 20,000 gallons to produce 1 kg of meat. For cotton, it may be 10,000 gallons. This is how we actually look at our footprint. We have a carbon footprint, an ecological footprint, a water footprint. But basically, this is a consumption. This is a consumption, lifestyles, trying to reduce the dependency on natural resources and try to reduce the use, wise use of best practices of water, of forest, of fish, you name it. If you go to the WWF website, there's a lot of information about how we actually reduce the consumption of the use of commodity, and on the flip side, how we make the most of what we have. Coming to your last question, this is, I think, the fourth time I've said to students that WWF has 2 or 3 tools which we can help you with. We have a scientific committee. We can fund scientific projects. You just have to go to our website and you can apply. We have internships all across the country, and we also have a partnership fund, which is a larger upscale version of scientific committee of, I think, 3 million rupees. We also provide scholarships with PhDs. Last time I was here, I actually told you all this, and I said, if you want to come to the office, fill in the form, you can intern with us, we can support your research for 6 months, we can pay for the research studies, If you come up with something good, we can get funds. That's very good at getting funds. We're a global name. Till present, not one student has come to our office. So it's not, I think it's up to me, it's up to you guys now. I mean, everything's open. We've supported so many MSCs, so many PhDs, national, international, for the last decade. But it's unfortunate, I don't know why, in Karachi especially, students are not picking up on this. If I put a flyer around tomorrow, I'm sure there won't be any response. So all you have to do is log on to the website, it's www.pac.org, go to the internship site, fill in and come in. Just come in, you'll never be turned away. Students never turned away from, at least my office. If they want to come and research, discuss their research, you're getting funding, and doing it, you're getting it advertised. That's what we're there for. That's one of our main aims in Pakistan, is to make you guys, who are basically engineers, conservationists and environmentalists, because you have solutions. You have to understand how they kind of they come together. So anybody, it's first come, first serve. But our door is always open, and we're welcome.
I have a comment of sorts, if you have time. I have a comment to make. Because of the industrial revolution in the developed countries, before, they have gone through this process of to the developing phase to the development phase. And now they are at the stage that they can, take the moral high ground, and, like, now they are considered, okay, we are much more concerned of the environment, and now we think of the environment. But as you said in your presentation that we as a country, or many other countries, do not contribute a lot towards the global warming. It's the developed and the industrialist countries that do it. So, I mean, in this case, what is our role in terms of mitigation consideration? Because we cannot really enforce it. And there are even countries who are worse off than Pakistan, for example, Maldives. Recently they staged an underwater conference just to highlight the serious dangers they are in. And I don't think even they have the possibility to adopt to these kind of conditions. And in this regard, your role as a global organization to bring from all over the world people on a common platform, just think about other people who are also who can just die because of this situation. So can you please comment on that?
Well, I mean, you've answered your own question. I mean, we can't do anything to mitigate because we're not a high producer, we're not a high emitter of CO2. We can do two or three things. One thing, we have to get our data. We need science and climate change in Pakistan, because when we go to these meetings, we don't have anything. And we're not taken seriously, actually. When we go to the COP meetings and these, you heard of Durban and whatever, Pakistan is not taken very seriously because we don't have good data, we don't have good science. If we go with good science, then people start to listen to us and start to involve us in that whole kind of climate change way forward. Second thing, we've got to be more vocal. I mean, just came to mind, how many here have relatives in UK or US? The company is few. There must be quite a few people. I mean, get them to write to their MPs, get them to write to the parliamentarians. That's why you're not taking it seriously in Pakistan and different countries, and make your voice heard. Within the countries, so the government is taking it up now, taking it quite seriously. We really have to keep on hammering with these people to get them to listen and get them to act. So for mitigation, there's not much we can do. We've got to look at adaptation, and basically we need more events like these, more media coverage, more events with kids, with the industrialists, with everybody, so they know the message and then they get the idea what it's all about.
Thank you very much, sir.